Building community isn't separate from your email and SMS marketing. It's really just an evolution of that existing foundation. Everything that you're doing, it just makes it that much more powerful.
You don't need a new platform or separate teams to start building this community or tribe and really transforming your subscribers. It really begins with the channel and people you already have. Start with the channels you own, especially email and SMS. Design your community architecture intentionally rather than waiting for organic growth. Non-financial value exchanges, basically identifying and belonging and giving them a reason to be a part of it and feeling the value that way. The concentric circles of engagement, rather than trying to get everybody into one group. Integrating community functions into your existing marketing plans, it needs to get integrated with what you're doing, not trying to build a separate function. Focus on retention first before expanding into acquisition. Don't try to build the acquisition of community. Take the people you have and build them into community.
It's really important to remember that kind of this meaningful community building is really a long-term investment. It's not a get-rich-quick type thing.
Starting small, focus on quality, build interactions, and then build that community that will drive value for years to come. That's why we call it a tribe, not anything more. That's exactly why we've been saying that. Yo, Chase, what's good, dude?
Not a whole lot. Excited to be here yet again. How are you?
Yeah, always excited to talk. Today, I think we're going to talk about something really fun. When I started my journey in email marketing in 2008, what was really different about where the world has gone with what email marketing or lists are versus where it was, I used to call them a tribe when we first started. And the reason why is because I come from the info space, and the way you thought about your list is more like a tribe or a community ultimately. So I want to do a pod on that here today.
Cool. I feel like that word tribe is what everyone thinks they have and aims for, but few people very have. So let's talk about how to actually build one and when you know you actually have one.
Yeah, with that, let's shoot this thing in 3, 2, 1.
From the open to the click, they're the masters of the flow. Just watch your list grow and your leads turn to gold. Did we retain you so far, or do we have to extend it? If you want results, you know you gotta send it. Yeah, you know you gotta send it. Yeah, you know you gotta send it. Yeah, you know you gotta send it.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Send It, where we discuss anything and everything retention marketing, specifically in email and SMS marketing and e-commerce. My name is Jimmy Kim, and I'm here with my co-host,
Chase Diamond.
All right, Chase, episode 35. The title of today's pod that I selected was From Subscriber to Brand Community, Building an Engaged Tribe Online. So today, we're going to dive into a topic that's becoming increasingly crucial for e-commerce brands, and that's building an engaged community around your brand. Look, we constantly are talking about email lists and SMS lists, but the most successful brands are taking their subscribers and turning them into something much more powerful, a true brand community.
Dude, 100%. I mean, better than anyone. This landscape today is super competitive. There's so many brands that are competing for the same, limited wallet share. So having loyal customers, isn't enough anymore. The brands that we're seeing winning are those that are managed to create really passionate communities that drive retention, ongoing acquisition, and really this all contributes to incredible LTV.
And what's fascinating on how email and SMS channels, as we talk about all the time, can be the foundation for building these communities. And today, I think what we want to talk about on the pod today is how we'll share those specific strategies to transform your subscriber base from this like email list to this like engaged tribe ultimately. But before we dive into these tactics, let's clarify what it means to have a brand community, because I think there's a lot of confusion about this term.
Yeah, and I kind of alluded to this in the beginning, but a lot of brands think they have this tribe or this community when really they just have a list of subscribers. And there's a big difference between having a list and having kind of this tribe slash community.
I agree. So let's go ahead and break down that difference between, between the two, because it's crucial to understand. So let's kind of do it. So a subscriber list to me is very simple. It's a one-way communication. So it's like brand to customer, generally transaction focused relationship. And this is okay if you've got like a drop shipping company or something, but most people are trying to build a brand, build a lifelong business. So it's something to think about. There's value exchange primarily on a product or discount. That's usually where the exchange happens. The customer experiences are very isolated, right? They're very unique in a one-on-one environment. And success is usually measured by revenue and conversions, right? Very simple. Where when we flip the kind of script and we start thinking about brand communities or tribes, I think about it as very multi-directional, right? Brands to customers and customers to customers. It can happen not only on email, SMS, but on social channels in different places. There's a relationship focused connection, right? They want to be a part of the brand. They want to learn more, and that value exchange includes identity, belonging, and like the shared passion for whatever that product and brand is selling ultimately. And it's really about collective experiences and shared narratives. And to me, success is measured more about engagement, advocacy, retention, aka the word of mouth.
Yeah, and one thing I kind of want to hone in is that multi-directional communication piece is super, super important. In a true community, your customers are talking to each other, not just listening to you. It's a lot more active.
Yeah, I love that. And it's an emotional component, I think, which separates communities from lists. Communities tap into identity. People join and stay because the community reinforces how they see themselves or how they aspire to be.
Yeah, and I'd say a couple that, we've seen, a couple big brands that have done this well would be folks like Peloton or kind of Glossier. And then even smaller brands like that beard brand company. And now they're not as small, but Liquid Death has done a great job. And at the end of the day, right, these folks are more about, building kind of this connection with people than just selling products, right? Because people are kind of diehard Liquid Death fans at this point, and they sell water in a can, right? It's not that crazy, but people are so passionate about it.
Yeah. And the reality is this, right? You may be listening to this pod or watching this pod and you're like, well, what's the business impact, Jimmy and Chase? Like, why would I do this? Why does it matter? So I went and pulled some stats up. So I'm going to pull them up over here, but the stats are pretty interesting. So, one, you've got 2 to 3 times higher retention rates when you're working in a community element versus a brand like a direct transactional email list, right? You have 20 to 40% higher customer lifetime values. That's a pretty big lift when you think about it. You also see a significantly lower customer acquisition costs through referrals, which are the best type of sales, in my opinion, because they're done through the word of mouth. They reduce the price sensitivity, and you generally have higher margins. I think one of the things that people love about community is that feedback loop, and you'll get that built-in product development side of things, which is great. And of course, I think the biggest thing about community, it's natural defense, man. People don't want to leave. Just like I love my Apple product, and no matter what the Android community tells me, I'll continue to own Apples.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, dude, in 2025, we're all facing as marketers so much more difficulties, especially around privacy. So, in the privacy kind of world that we're living in today, third-party data is just frankly disappearing. It's not as plentiful as it used to be. So, having this like thriving community really does create this really rich, incredible first-party data advantage that a lot of people really could take advantage of.
All right. So let's flip into more of the strategy piece because people listening, they get it, right? This is important. This is why I want to do this. But what do I actually do? So let's go ahead and we'll go through a couple strategy here. So the first strategy we want to explore is how to use your existing email and SMS as a foundation for community building. This is so important because many brands think they have a fancy platform or massive social media following to build community when they really have a perfect channel right in front of them.
That's right. And with that, email and SMS are actually really ideal starting points for these community because you own these channels completely. They've got great reach, especially SMS and obviously email if done correctly. And they're already part of your customers' daily routines. People wake up to it, they check it throughout the day, they check it at the evening. They're already doing this.
Yeah, no, I love that, Chase. Why don't you break that down for us and talk about that a little bit more?
For sure. So, in terms of kind of the email and SMS community building framework, it looks like this. Number one, so you want to start with segmented conversation starters and kind of a couple points of that. So, number one for that is ask questions that invite responses in regular emails. So, start trying to have a call to action that gets people to respond and that trains people to be able to start engaging in that dialogue with you. And then from there, right, if you're doing SMS, I would create stuff like simple SMS polls that share kind of aggregated results. Kind of it ends up being a two-way street. If people give feedback and data, they want you to share it, and it's kind of interesting. And then also, you want to highlight kind of customer stories and invite reactions, right? Make it again that two-way dialogue where they can have a say and kind of really feel like their voice is being heard. Because there's nothing worse than inviting someone to engage and respond and react, and then never actually, following up and frankly just ghosting them. And then again, use these kind of email replies as a low friction community entry point. So that's number one. Moving on to the next one, is I recommend creating content that facilitates, identity building. And really what this looks like is as follows. So you're going to want to develop language and terminology specific to your community. We worked with a client called Poopery, and they had their whole like BIP thing, which was around like
Yeah.
for people that poop, right? And they were just really funny and interesting around like just leaning into it. It's for people, it's our community for people that poop, right? And they kind of branded it and made it not weird. And then you want to share kind of customer success stories that reinforce the community identity. What's happening in the community? How are people engaging? What are people learning? What are they doing? And then taking that content and creating it and just sharing it so members recognize each other. And they realize that there's more than just you, the brand, and them, the customer, that there's a whole other people that look and sound like them and have similar dreams and aspirations. And then you want to use kind of this email and SMS channel to reinforce this kind of insider status. And then kind of the last one I want to go into is it's really important to kind of cross pollinate between your channels
Mm.
strategically. A lot of people keep their channels siloed, and that's not the best way to do it. So you want to use email to drive SMS signups and vice versa. It's a two-way street. And then from there, you're going to take kind of your subset of your most engaged email subs and invite them into more interactive channels. And then you want to use SMS to let people know about time sensitive community opportunities. And really, when you do this, you create this really rich kind of omni channel community experience that people love to be a part of. And that's very differentiated from what everyone else is doing.
Hey, okay, I'm disrupting the pod for just a quick 60-second break and a quick little shout out to our title sponsors of the podcast, OmniSend. Okay, for those that don't know, OmniSend is an all-in-one email and SMS marketing automation platform specifically designed for e-commerce brands. They make it super easy to engage with customers, drive repeat sales, and create those seamless personal experiences we're always talking about. Here's 3 things I love about OmniSend. First and foremost, they're trusted by over 125,000 e-commerce merchants worldwide that absolutely love them. With a 4.8 rating star with over 6,000 reviews on the Shopify App Store, it's an obvious choice for your email, SMS, and push needs. Secondly, I love great customer support. And OmniSend, they're absolutely nailing it. They're responsive, their help docs are great, and their team is absolutely fantastic. And third, they have great features and better pricing. Pricing matters just as much as features, and OmniSend, you're going to get both of those. And they have all the features you need for your store, and their pricing is absolutely fantastic. In fact, recently I just heard a story about 2 community members that made the switch. One reduced his price from $8,500 to $3,500, which is huge, but even bigger, that $3,500 included SMS, which is absolutely wild. Then another agency I just recently talked to, they just switched their entire client base over, and he's been saving his clients anywhere from 30 to 60% off their bill, which is allowing them to take that money and reinvest it on the top of the funnel so they can make more ads and make more money. OmniSend nails these 3 things that I care most about: great support, great features, and fair pricing. Plus, I just helped Chase make the move to OmniSend with his own personal email list, and their migration was super easy. They even have a team to help you support you, and they have a great automated tool to bring your contacts right over. So if you're looking to take your email marketing to the next level, I highly recommend checking out OmniSend. They got the tools, the automation, the expertise to help your brands grow and thrive. Head over to omnisend.com/send it to learn more and start scaling your customer engagement today. Now let them know Chase and Jimmy sent you. Now let's get back to the pod. Dude, that's a great breakdown. Those are 3 strong points. And what I love about that approach is that it's very accessible. You don't need any new technology platforms to start, just a willingness to transform the way that your existing communication kind of works.
Yeah, that's right. In the past, we've worked with, like, for example, a sustainable clothing company, and they built their entire kind of community through essentially their post-purchase email sequence, where they really just asked customers to reply with a photo of their first outfit,
Mm.
and then they shared those photos, with permission, that obviously is important, in future emails. And that simple exchange started thousands of conversations, and it was quite surprising.
No, that's really another one that I saw is a company called Outdoorsy, and they use this weekly email newsletter to like highlight their customer stories about their RV rentals. They'll include 2, 3 customer photos and a trip story with each newsletter. And what they're really doing is they're creating that sense that the customer is part of a larger community of like adventurers ultimately. And doing that whole RV thing last year, that's where I got hooked on this stuff, just learning. And every time I get those emails, it makes me think about it and go, maybe I want to go do it, but I honestly don't want to do it. So, but this is something that at least triggers it for me.
Yeah, that's cool. And the main key here, right, is really shifting kind of from this more broadcast centric style of emails to more of these kind of conversation starter emails. And instead of just announcing kind of your latest products, invite people to respond and showcase their voices when they do respond. So that way you basically kind of subconsciously or consciously confirm that affirmation with them that you're going to listen to them and you're going to engage with them. And they might even have a chance to be featured, which is really cool.
And let's not forget SMS. I think that's a thing that we need to talk about too. We're seeing brands use simple interactive elements like polls to create community moments. A beverage brand that I was consulting with, they send out weekly flavor votes via SMS, share the results, and then produce limited runs of that winning flavor ultimately. And it creates a sense of collective decision making, which I like. The beauty of starting with email and SMS that you can test a community concept with very minimal risk ultimately. If something doesn't resonate, you can quickly adjust without being invested in some kind of expensive like platform ultimately. Which leads me to the second strategy, Chase, I want to talk about, which is kind of the intentional community design, the community architecture ultimately. Successful communities don't just happen by accident, they're usually carefully architected.
Yeah, dude, that's a great point. I think a lot of brands kind of fall into the bucket of just throwing together a Facebook group or a Discord server, and they expect magic to happen, right? Like the whole if you build it, they'll come mentality, which just isn't frankly the right one. So without this kind of intentional design, these groups or these spaces really remain kind of ghost towns. They're a lot of work. I mean, we're building a community together right now, and you're doing a lot of like the kind of heavy lifting, kind of in the weeds work to get them kicked off. It's super important. And then, maybe you get lucky if you do this and you briefly flourish, but then eventually it's going to kind of fizzle out because there's no sustainable structure. So building it with intention and strategically from the beginning really is the key.
Yeah, the community has to almost get a life of its own over time, and people need to step up and want to be a part of it. I really like that. You've got a framework around this, right? Why don't you tell me about that a little bit?
Yeah, a lot of this has kind of been developed from what we're running in our own community that you and I are doing, but essentially to dive into kind of to the community design framework, more kind of focus for, I guess, D2C would be number one. So you have to start and kind of create a clear community identity and purpose, really kind of focusing on like what unites your community beyond just your products. What makes you different? Why should people care? And with that, it's like, what are the community core values and behaviors? How should people engage? How should they act? What is frowned upon? What is encouraged? And with that, like you want to develop a clear kind of minimal viable community. Again, I think I mentioned this on the last pod, but like just like you have an MVP for your products, you want to have like the MVC here. Like what is the minimal viable community vision? And align that community purpose with both customers and your business needs. There has to be alignment. You can't just create a community to create a community. It has to make sense for everyone involved, all the stakeholders. And then from there, you're going to need and want to establish kind of community roles and leadership. It can't just be that like you're going to start it and hope that it works out and figure it out. With ours, right? Like we really figured out that you're like the community guy. You're the guy that's in there. You love answering questions. People love getting your feedback. Like you were kind of the face of it and kind of the guy that's just really being the glue, at least in the beginning. So with that, right, you want to identify and kind of nurture potential community leaders among customers. And ideally, right, like if you can crowdsource this and get the folks within the community that are really engaged and really love you and want to be involved, that's fantastic. And as that happens, if you can kind of assign people and create like these clear roles for these people as they become more engaged, that's great. I know, I think on like Facebook, for example, they give people kind of badges, like, someone's a top contributor or someone's a rising contributor. And the whole thing there is just to gamify it so people feel encouraged to continue to engage. So that way they level up and they don't lose their status. That whole psychology is super important. And if you too can also, develop kind of this progression path from the new member to this advocate in this position of power and authority, people love that. And then also too, you do want to kind of train any of your internal kind of company team members to act as community facilitators, not just moderators. So that way, this is kind of constantly happening
Hmm.
throughout. And then kind of the last one that's been really important that we've realized is you want to design kind of regular rhythms and rituals. When people get accustomed to engaging daily, weekly, and monthly within the community around certain fun things. I don't know, maybe it's like touch point Tuesday or whatever the Fridays is, and you kind of do something catchy and fun, and people kind of build habits around it. That's super important. And with that, right, building kind of and developing these signature events and these signature things is super important. And then you also have like the moments between the moments that are kind of the organic things that just give people a daily win or a daily smile or a daily place to share
Mm.
something that's important to them is great. So using email and SMS again, as mentioned before, is a great way to kind of loop people in that maybe went idle, to kind of shout out and encourage people that have been active to engage. So just taking that omni-channel approach that we talked about is super important.
I like those habits. The ritual piece is super powerful because, having some kind of predictable element, humans are kind of creatures of habit ultimately. And to give a community a sense of tradition and anticipation is probably the most key point that I took away from that.
Yeah, dude, I absolutely agree with you. And I'd say one of the most kind of successful implementations I've seen with this is kind of a brand that was running a warehouse sale. They created something called like a Sunday Run Day ritual. And essentially every Sunday, they send an email kind of promoting customers and kind of prompting customers to share their weekend runs.
Mm.
And it's become this community-wide habit that customers actually look forward to. They make it a priority and a habit because there's not this accountability factor too, which is really, really important for belonging and community and this sense of being.
And another part I was just thinking about as you're talking about that is the role progression, which I think is pretty crucial too, because people need to see a path of greater participation and something that I need to work on and recognition within the community. I think that's something that people are looking for.
Yeah, and a kind of funny but a good example is Legos. And yes, we're talking about the thing that we all played with growing up, and if you have kids, maybe they're getting into it too. But they built this adult kind of fan community, which is equally weird as it is cool. And essentially, what they did is they created specific programs like Lego Ideas and kind of their ambassador network with clear roles in this, as mentioned, kind of these recognition systems and these ongoing regular events, and people geek out about it.
Yeah, on a smaller scale, the D2C brand Gymshark, they use their email list to coordinate like synchronized product drop and challenge events and bring their community together through some kind of shared experience. I think they have all done a great job there too.
Yeah, agreed. And I'd say like one kind of email strategy that we've seen work well is, as we mentioned, creating kind of like these rituals through email. Outdoor Voices, which is like that women brand I think a lot of
Hmm.
people know of. Um, Another example is they had like this Monday movement email that again that prompts people and kind of promotes their community to share their activities at the start of each week. So again, building your habits with them on Monday, getting move in type of a thing, just start your week on a better note.
Hey, it's Jimmy, and I know you're enjoying this pod, but if I can just have 30 seconds of your time, I'd love to invite you to our thriving, growing community for retention marketing. Chase and I recently realized that there is no centralized community for retention marketers, specifically focused on email and SMS. And oftentimes, most communities are just for founders or for executives only. That's why we're proud to share on this pod that we have over 350 marketers in a closed community via Slack where we talk about everything and everything email and SMS. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're invited to come join us. It's just $1 to get started for a trial, and you'll get 1, access to the Slack community, 2, weekly private newsletters on actionable things that you can do in your email marketing. 3, we have special meetups and webinars that are retention focused. 4, you'll have direct access to myself and Chase. And 5, we have special discounts and other cool perks that we have. This is where we hang out, and if you want to hang out with us, this is where you should come join us. It's called Ecom Email Certified Community, and you can learn more at ecomemailcertified.com or check the show notes for direct links. Hope to see you there, and we'll send you back to the pod now. All right. So I think the takeaway for me and the insight that I'm taking here is that community architecture should be designed before you invest significant resources into building community. Start by identifying your roles, your rituals, your identity, and then implement those elements through your existing channels here today. Pretty clear, I think. All right. I want to jump into our third strategy here because the third one that I'm thinking about is creating value-based community exchanges ultimately. Basically, I want to move beyond discounts and promotions to offer some type of form of deep value ultimately.
Yeah, I think that's a big mistake is a lot of brands get this wrong, is they just try to build their community through ongoing constant deals and discounts, which just attracts kind of short-term deal seekers rather than true community members. And once you get into this ritual and this habit of just always doing discounts, it's really hard to dig your way out.
Yeah, we just had a community member actually ask about this. They said, "Hey, we're not allowed to do discounts or different things on our brand. So, how can I build a non-traditional or non-transactional value exchange that speaks to identity, belonging, and growth?" So, here's kind of what I told them on there. But I said, number one, I think that what you got to start with is like focusing on their identity and belonging to their benefits, right? Recognizing their contributions, like your customers' contributions, and kind of reinforcing self-images ultimately. And I think one thing that people love is access to like-minded people who share the same values and interests. And I think this is something you got to think about. There's also status and identity markers based on like how you're participating or a sense of purpose or alignment with your personal values. Another way, and someone else kind of came in and mentioned this, which was great, but they said, hey, why don't you create exclusive access or experience, not just discounts? So behind the scenes content, early access to information or product development, direct access to the team or decision makers. And even the best one that I don't even think they mentioned, but I love, is a members only event or experiences. Basically, get on in order to get the most exclusive members only virtual or physical events. Right. So there's that too. And then, of course, there's growth opportunities. I think one of the things that people don't do, and on my other pod, I had this guy, Greg Dalby from Woobles, which is like this really fancy crochet education company. But what they do a lot of stuff is they facilitate mastery. And I love that because that's how they're growing their community, where they're doing educational content that helps members develop a skill, crocheting, right? They build challenges to get people to build different versions of it. They have mentorship opportunities where they'll connect new members and experienced members through their group. And they recognize progress and achievement within that community. And I think that, to me, nails exactly what you're thinking about.
Yeah, dude. What's I think really powerful about this approach is that these value exchanges actually really create stronger kind of emotional bonds than discounts, because you make people feel a type of way. Again, saving someone money is cool and great, and obviously there's a market for it. But when you get people to actually, frankly, give a shit about you while preserving your margins, that's a huge W.
Yeah, and my wife is a big Peloton person, and Peloton has a huge community around achievement and growth rather than discounts. Their prices have always been high. Their membership's not cheap for what it is, but their community structure reinforces identity as an athlete and offers like milestone recognition that really nails the mark.
Yeah, and I always butcher their name, but Glossier, whatever their name is.
Glossier, I think, is how they
Yeah,
pronounce
yeah, yeah.
themselves.
And with them, they built their kind of into the Gloss community around more knowledge sharing and expertise development than actual discounts themselves. And essentially, kind of the win there was they made their readers feel like insiders with this specialized knowledge. Again,
Yeah.
deals are cool, but they really equip them with knowledge, which is, as you know, power.
Yeah, and to bring this back, I think where the email and SMS application here is really crucial is you can get these channels to deliver non-discount value that build community, early access emails, behind the scene content, member spotlights. These deliver community value without cutting into margins.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of build on that, like, with the brands that we're talking about, when they use kind of like this community insider email segment that receive like these kind of special product updates, maybe polls about future products, and even potentially like virtual kind of studio tours, those types of things, it make the subscribers feel really bought in, more like partners in kind of the brand's journey, rather than kind of just customers that are just merely transactionally purposed.
Yeah, and don't forget SMS. I think that's another one you got to remember because you can create exclusive like text only subscribers. My buddy over at Brian over at Almost Pride, they just launched a new website and they've never done text message. I said now is the time to do text message, and what you want to do is take them and do a monthly exclusive masterclass on feeding your dog or how to portion your thing out. And he was telling me that, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna go implement that and get people into their community because they've got a good tribe today. And I think the real nature of SMS makes it perfectly because these are more time bound exclusive moments. And look, when I hear this one, I really like this part of the topic of what we're working on because I think the key is where you're identifying what the specific customer base truly values beyond discounts and creating an exchange for those values. Well, that's kind of what we all want, man. We want people to have that premium feel and experience. All right. The number four strategy, let's jump into that one because the fourth strategy is implementing a concentric circle model for community growth. This is when you're building community in layers rather than trying to create one massive group, right? Really breaking it out by segments ultimately. This is important because Many brands are falling into the trap thinking bigger is always better, but when it comes to community size, we actually want to look smaller and look for more structured growth or a structured approach to that growth instead of it. So, Chase, what do you know about this stuff? Do you know anything about this?
Hey, it's Chase, taking just 30 seconds of your time because I found something game changing for e commerce marketers and agencies. If you happen to be drowning in retention marketing tasks, we have a solution for you. It's AI. There's an AI strategist, AI segmentation, AI email builder. It's called Rayleon, and this is the platform that helps marketers like myself and yourself create everything from emails to custom segmentation based on your data and your email marketing strategy. I mean, imagine getting everything from an audit to campaign planning in just a handful of clicks and in under 5 minutes. Their AI handles everything from segmentation to strategy and creating on brand copy that actually converts. Brands using Rayon save about 50% of their retention marketing time and see an average of 3x ROI. Yes, you're going to save time and make more money. Talk about a no brainer. And this is really why brands like Coast, Ginger Milk, and Life Pro trust them and really utilize them and start recommending them to everyone. So head to Rayleon.io, that's RALEON.io, for a 3 months email AI segmentation playbook in just 60 seconds. Yes, it's 100% free to try, and this will be the best 5 minutes you spend today, I promise. Rayleon.io, let them know that myself and Jimmy sent you, and we're now back to the pod. Yeah, you cool if I break down kind of this kind of concentric circle framework that I can discuss?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Okay, cool. All right, so starting at the top with this, right? Step one is we want to identify and nurture this highly engaged kind of core community. Again, it doesn't need to be massive, but it does need to be engaged. So you want to focus on this quality engagement with your most aligned customers first. And then from there, right, you want to kind of build out this kind of strong culture and connection patterns with these core members before you focus on expansion. And with that, when you empower these core members first as kind of like these co-creators or these kind of early adopters, these founding members, it's super important. And with this, kind of everyone wants to know KPIs or how to measure it. You want to measure your success by the engagement depth, not just the size. It's more important that these people actually care or engage and involved than just the number of people that are quote unquote in your community. And then from there, you want to kind of create these graduated engagement opportunities. So with that, you can design multiple participation levels requiring different commitment. Some people, frankly, are just never going to be super deeply involved, and some people want to be the most ingrained, deeply involved person possible. So building different kind of milestones and different ways for these different types of groups of subsets to engage is super important. And then with that, you want to make sure that the kind of the extension path, the clear pathway for these people to get involved deeper, is really clearly outlined. And that allows people to then figure out like where they see themselves to be able to self-select their engagement level. And this can ebb and flow depending on the season. And then with this, right, like you do want to recognize the value of both kind of the high intensity folks and also to the
Mm.
casual participation because not it's not one size fits all, and you want to make sure that there are opportunities for everyone. And then the last thing on this kind of framework that I want to mention is, scaling through kind of these sub communities is important rather than kind of focusing on the dilution. And essentially, what I mean is you want to create kind of topic specific or reason specific kind of subgroups as you grow. That way, it's not like 1,000 people trying to engage with 1,000 people at one time across different states and time zones, etc. It's better to kind of maintain like these optimal interaction group sizes, anywhere from 50 to 100, upwards of maybe 200 people that are active and engaged. That way, there's enough
Yeah.
conversation and enough noise without it being kind of overwhelming. It's very overwhelming to try to jump into a group of 1,000 people all engaging at once. And that obviously is a great problem to have, but it's still a problem. And then again, with this, connecting these sub communities for shared events and representatives and using kind of email and SMS. And I know Jimmy keeps mentioning SMS is super important, obviously is. Using that to coordinate across these sub communities is a great way.
You know, what I love about what you've kind of shared so far with this model is that it recognizes that different customers want different levels of community involvement. And what you're saying basically is we want to create spaces for them.
Yeah, that's right. You don't want to alienate one person because you want everyone to be deeply involved or everyone to be kind of slightly involved. Because again, not every customer needs or wants to be deeply involved, but they still
Mm.
might value kind of later community connection. It's kind of similar like on social media. You'd be surprised the people that are actually looking and viewing at your stuff regularly that just frankly are never going to like or comment or reshare, but they're getting value from it. So you do want people to be able to get value and be involved and feel like they're a part of something without having to be super intense.
Yeah, going back to the whole like Peloton and cycling thing that my wife does, but there's this company called Rafa Cycling Club,
Okay.
and they do that really brilliant with their chapters model. Instead of one massive like global community, they have these local chapters that ride their own events, and they're connected to a broader identity and occasional growth global challenges, but most of them are regional challenges.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's like all the business groups too, right? They all have local chapters because a lot of times
Mm,
too, someone in a local community, let's say in Orange County, might have, I know you're in Austin, might have different needs
yeah.
and challenges and certain things than someone in Austin, Texas. Lifestyle, cost of living, all these types of things. So, and then with that, like from an email perspective, segmentation is going to be super important as the community scales. So
Mm.
as your community grows, your email strategy should evolve from one to many broadcasts to this more kind of highly segmented communication that we always talk about here, just so that way that feels like they're coming from these specific sub communities that they have kind of alignment with.
Yeah, so you're basically saying you want to take different email content for different subgroups or segments of your community, from casual members who receive like monthly updates, and then you got the core group who gets maybe like daily or weekly behind the scene content or exclusive invitations ultimately, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we talk about this a lot, but like the whole behavioral segmentation thing is so powerful. And that's where this really gets the chance to shine.
Mm.
So you can really identify like the engagement patterns that indicate someone's ready to move from, one level to maybe a deeper level. And then using kind of email and SMS as that communication mechanism to transition them at that right place and time, in that right moment. Dude, that's the holy grail.
Okay, so for example, we want to track which subscribers are constantly opening and clicking on a community focused content. And then you can use that to identify who might be ready for an invitation to like your core community activities, right? Yeah, okay. Beauty of this model is it also allows for sustainable growth without diluting what makes your community special, because you're really focused on the data and layering that on to drive value without that, disrupting your existing connections ultimately. All right. Cool. I love that one. That's a good one. All right. I want to move on to the next one. Our fifth strategy focuses on integrating community building into your existing marketing operations rather than separating it as a function, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think this is important because I think a lot of brands think they need to hire someone that's dedicated to this
Mm.
community team or create like a entirely new team or department before they can start community building. And that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, I mean, we even went through that little cycle with trying to figure out what we want to do. And the reality of community building is that it's best when it's like woven into your existing program and efforts, especially in your email and SMS. And I've got a little framework I think I've really picked up and learned over the time. So I usually start off with your existing retention channels and you expand, right? So you can use your current email and SMS programs as kind of like your community foundation to get people in there, right? Then you identify those community building opportunities with existing workflows, like inviting them in, promoting it, getting them into wherever that community lives and exists. For us, for example, on our email certified community, it lives on Slack, for example, but we reinforce it with newsletters, for example, right? And you want to test different concepts before investing any dedicated resources. We've been testing for months. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of the trial for us, is that we put it out there and we've been watching, we've been throwing different things out and seeing what happens. And then, I think the next thing that we want to really do is transform those existing roles into more community concepts, right? Or components ultimately, involving that email marketing specialist into more community facilitators. So we'll probably take some from our team. We'll probably start training, and we have been training some of our people on our team right now to become more community managers so they can help continue to facilitate that community. You want to add development to social media teams' responsibilities, because it's not just about the retention point. It really requires the whole buy-in from the entire team, and that's going to create that like cross-functional community working group. And then, of course, you want to measure it. I think this has been something interesting for us, but we need to continue to measure. How is the engagement going? How is it affecting your retention? How is the churn? How are people effectively staying within the community? And you want to measure that through in D2C, especially with customer lifetime values? Are you seeing that increase? Are you seeing purchases increase? Are you seeing it when you're talking about the community? You're seeing more sales happen. You want to calculate that community influence on those referrals and acquisition that are happening. And then of course, you can use data to justify the gradual resource expansion ultimately.
Yeah, dude, I think you nailed it. I'd say like this approach really makes community building accessible to brands of all sizes, not just one with huge budgets and tons of resources for these kind of dedicated teams.
Yeah, and again, we'll go back to retention. The email marketing team is often the perfect starting point for community building because it's already understanding segmentation, customer journeys, and how to measure that engagement.
Yeah, and I was thinking about a brand we worked with in the past in the kind of the home fitness space. And essentially, they started their community simply by just adding a weekly challenge section to their regular marketing emails. It's such an easy way to kind of double dip with what they're already doing that took maybe an
Mm.
extra couple minutes a week, but added a lot of value. So, they spent, not that much time and they ended up with a really engaged customer segment to show for it.
Yeah, and this we mentioned this earlier, but another way again to come back to it is really looking at the data of people who are opening and clicking at high rates and create specialized content just for them to continue to encourage that interaction. I feel like it creates this kind of like seed community that can grow over time of the most highly interactive people.
Yeah, dude. One of the most effective implementations we've seen is when brands just add this community element to their existing post-purchase sequence. I know we mentioned that example before, but I wanted to double down on that. And the reason being is like this leverages a touch point you're already investing in, but it transforms kind of from a transactional follow-up into a community onboarding experience. And post-purchase, like people are excited. They open the emails at a high rate and they're more receptive to really getting involved.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And, measuring that is also just as crucial. So if you can demonstrate how the community's elements impact your like KPIs. So like again, your retention rate, your repeat rate, what products are selling, it just becomes easier to justify like an investment and going to your CEO or founder and being like, I want to go invest in this. Well, they're going to look at you and be like, why? Right. But if you have data that you've been able to do without them even really being involved in it, and getting them to move in that direction, then you can justify that investment ultimately.
Yeah, and when you go to them, I'd say the key insight to focus on here to get this approved would be, that community building itself doesn't have to be a huge resource intensive
Mm.
and separate initiative. It could just be a small tweak to your existing marketing program that as you prove it out and as you scale it, it just gradually evolves into something more robust.
Yeah, no, I like that. All right, I'm gonna go into our final strategy because this is our sixth one, and I want to talk about this. And I call it the full funnel community approach that leverages community elements throughout the entire customer journey. And I think a lot of the stuff we've said did it, but I want to put it all together. So this is crucial because brands make this mistake thinking that the community is only in terms of acquisition or only in terms of retention, or rather, they're seeing potential across their entire customer life cycle.
Yeah, and the reality is though that the most successful community driven brands are using community elements from the very first touch all the way to kind of that loyal repeat customer and onwards.
Yeah, like the funnel, right? You're thinking about it pre-purchase all the way to post-purchase to that repeat purchase. Chase, you want to break this down because I think you have a really good understanding of how this full funnel community framework works.
Yeah, let's run it. So, okay, so starting with the top, number one, we want to focus first on kind of this post-purchase community integration. We've already told you how important this is and the success you've had, but what you want to do here is you want to design kind of this onboarding sequence that introduces the community elements. That's number one. Then two, is you want to kind of create like this quick win community experience early in the customer relationship. And then with that, you're going to want to use that initial kind of purchase moment as the primary community entry point. It's like, all right, now that you're on the other side of making that purchase, we want to welcome you into the fold. And then lastly, you're going to want to connect these new customers with existing community members so they can really quickly understand what it's about. The next thing to focus on is you want to build kind of this retention focused community programming. And what we mean here is that you're going to want to create these ongoing education and utilization programs that develop kind of community rituals and encourage regular engagement. Again, like the more you engage, the better. Obviously, right? We mentioned before there's going to be different levels, but you do want to encourage people to engage, and then they'll naturally kind of self select where they want to be. And then you want to establish kind of this recognition signal for continued participation. People always want a pat on the back. They always want to be told that they're being seen and they're doing well. So when you build those touch points in, they feel really good and it feels like a reward. And then you want to build these milestone celebrations that reinforce this belonging. Again, just different touch points that tell them, hey, you're on the right track. We appreciate you. We see you. We hear you. You're really making a difference. People love that. And then the last kind of bucket would be expanding to acquisition only after retention community is strong. So what this means is you want to leverage kind of existing community members for kind of authentic acquisition. A loyal customer, kind of UGC, referrals, recommendations, all of those are so important. And this allows you to create kind of this public facing element of this otherwise private community that really is a huge lure and draw for new people. And again, developing content that really helps the community and helps prospects. All of this is so important. So hopefully that was helpful.
No, I love that approach. And you know what recognizes a strong community is typically inside out, starting from existing customers before expanding into acquisition.
Yeah, exactly right. And the strongest acquisition focused communities are those that first establish kind of these really key core connections among existing members. And then they kind of leverage those relationships for further growth.
Yeah, I would say if you think about what this community, it's almost like a community flywheel, right? Where happy customers are bringing new prospects who are happy customers themselves, create this like growth engine ultimately.
Yeah, it's right. And then as we've mentioned, and we're going to continue to re-mention, email and SMS are the perfect channels for implementing this full funnel approach, right? You can create post-purchase specific sequences that introduce these community elements, use the segmentation to deliver more content to your most engaged customers, and it's just a great place to really dive in with really rich, deep data.
Yeah, and I think the perfect addition here is that once you've got that part down, then you can start creating like the acquisition focused campaigns that showcase your community ultimately and their experiences to those prospects that you're doing on the acquisition side.
For sure. And then just to add to that, and then I know we're kind of getting towards the end, is I'd say like one of the most effective implementations we've seen is brands that view their email list and frankly their SMS list as well, but they kind of view it as different kind of concentric circles with prospects on the outside. I guess new customers would kind of be the
Mm.
next layer, and essentially community members are at the center. They design their content to move people inward towards these kind of inner circles.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And, it made me think about testimonials and stories from your community members. They probably will help you build the best prospecting facing emails to help you show the value of joining your brand community, not just buying your product. So it's like you're selling the community, less on the product. The product is a byproduct of the community that you've developed. And that's how you get involved in the community. And people want to feel a part of something ultimately.
Yeah, for sure. One kind of last quick tip would be SMS is really powerful in these
Mm.
instances for really kind of creating like this real time community moments that span the full funnel. Things like product drops or maybe even like special events that are really going to be uniting and bringing prospects together, new customers together, and ultimately kind of people that are quote unquote like community veterans into the fold.
Yeah. So my takeaway from that full funnel is that it's community building should be followed like a deliberate sequence ultimately from retention to acquisition rather than trying to do everything at once or focusing just on acquisition. You got to think about it fully, right? All
Yep.
right, cool. Well, let's wrap this thing up because I think we've been going for a little bit. I feel like there's so much information. If you've enjoyed a lot of the stuff that you've heard, I really encourage you to go back. But let's summarize those key principles from transforming subscribers into true community brand or tribe.
Yeah, for me on my mind, as I kind of reflect on the episode, I'd say that the most important takeaway is probably building a community isn't separate from your email and SMS marketing. It's really just an evolution of that existing foundation, that work that you're doing that takes, again, everything that you're doing and just makes it that much more powerful.
Yeah, no, you nailed it, I think. And thinking back at what we just talked about here, there's a lot of things. You don't need a new platform or separate teams to start building this community or tribe and really transforming your subscribers. It really begins with the channel and people you already have. So here's the key takeaways, and I've been like kind of writing it down as you've been talking about it. So one, start with the channels you own, right? That's number one, especially email and SMS. Duh. Then you got to design your community architecture intentionally rather than waiting for organic growth. So you have to almost predefine it. It won't be exactly what happens, but you want to make it find a way to do it. The third thing that we talked about was the non-financial value exchanges, basically identifying and belonging and giving them a reason to be a part of it and feeling the value that way. The concentric circles of engagement, rather than trying to get everybody into one group, you want to almost break it down. It may be, men's, women's, you might go to age groups, whatever that community function might be, or beginner, newbie, whatever it might be. Integrating community functions into your existing marketing plans, that's been key here. It needs to get integrated with what you're doing, not trying to build a separate function. And the last thing, I think the key here, and we talk about retention all the time, but focus on retention first before expanding into acquisition. Don't try to build the acquisition of community. Take the people you have and build them into community. You think that's a good breakdown there?
Dude, awesome breakdown. And one more thing that came to mind is it's really important to remember that kind of this meaningful community building is really a long-term investment. It's not a get rich quick type thing. And the brands that are really going to see the best impact, and those that are frankly already are, they've been consistently nurturing their community for years on years.
Yeah, I think that's right. Starting small, focus on quality, build interactions, and then build that community that will drive value for years to come. 100%. I'm with you on that. And that's why we call it a tribe, not
Yes.
anything more. That's exactly why we've been saying that.
Cool. So to close this out, if you're getting started, I'd say begin by identifying your most engaged email subs and really creating opportunities for them first to connect with one another. That's step one. And this really kind of small initiative really can grow into something really powerful. It's been really eye-opening for us to see firsthand as we've done it ourselves and worked with numerous brands. And then make sure you're measuring kind of the right metrics. Don't just track community size, but again, look at participation, look at retention, look at purchase frequency, and look at LTV. This is really how you're going to prove out the ROI of these community investments.
Dude, that was perfect ending. I think that's a perfect last piece of advice. And with that, we will call this a wrap for this one. Episode 35, from subscriber to brand community, building an engaged tribe online. It's a little bit of a different and unique thought process, but it's what everybody wants. Everybody wants a community, but everyone wants to run off to Facebook and just start a community. But the reality is you should start with the ways that we've kind of outlined here today. And it really starts with the retention program. So if you're listening to this and you're a retention marketer, obviously that falls on you. And this is a great strategy to bring to your team, to bring to your brand, to your founder, your VP, whoever you work with. Or if you're the founder listening to this, well, this is how you implement it and tell the team that you're working with to get it done, to get it start moving into the right direction. With that, if you've enjoyed this podcast today, make sure you like, follow, subscribe. And of course, the most important thing that we really want to know is, did you like this pod? Tell us about it in the comments. Tell us what you think we can do better. If you have questions, we're here to answer. And of course, if you really want to talk to us, come join our private community. Right? We have this community. We've been talking about it. It only makes a lot of sense. So that's found at ecomemailcertified.com. Link in the show description below on that. And then, of course, we also have a certification program and so forth. And what about social media? Chase, where can they find you on social?
Most platforms, if not all platforms, Chase, Noe, and Dimond.
Cool. And you can find me on LinkedIn and X. We both post a lot of cool stuff all about retention, email, marketing. We talk a little bit of everything. So come check us out. Come follow us. Come connect with us. And we hope you continue to learn with us. So, all right, Chase, that was a good one. We're coming back next week, episode 36. Something that, again, I loved talking about something that was relevant to what we're working on. So next week, we're doing it again because we're working on this thing right now. But email and SMS for high ticket products, nurturing and dealing with this longer sales flow. Let's talk about that next week. I'm excited because I've been learning a lot of stuff and I'm still not perfect at it, but I think when we talk about it, it can maybe bring some aha moments for those high ticket D2C products that are in the market. So see you next week, dude.
Cheers.
From the open to the click, they're the masters of the flow. Just watch your list grow and your leads turn to go. Did we retain you so far, or do we have to extend it? If you want results, you know you gotta send it. Yeah, you know you gotta send it. Yeah, you know you gotta send it. Yeah, you know you gotta send it.